We are live. Its management, we are bringing it live. We have eminent speakers, Dr. Ram Prasad Dey. He is the professor at CSSS, College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and Child Health. He is honorary treasurer in Bengal OBG Society. He has got special awards like Foxy, Mr. Chandravati Devi Jagannath Singh Prize. He has received the first prize. Best paper on oncology at 54th All India Congress of Ops Gynae on January 11 at Hyderabad. He has also got that Golden Jubilee Switzerland Award for Best Paper on Menopause at 50th AICOG 2007 at Kolkata. He has done many publications in Ops and Gynae also. So let us welcome Dr. Ram Prasad Dey. We also have Dr. Subhash Chandra Biswas. He is member of International Publication Committee, IUGA, Eurogynae Committee, FOXY. He is also professor, Department of Ops Gynae, IPG member, Kolkata. He is the past president of BOGS in 1718. He was secretary, Board of Studies, West Bengal University of Health Sciences. He is national editor for JOGI and FOXY in 2011 to 2013. He is in the advisory panel of multiple organizations and also government of West Bengal. He has done peer review for multiple journals like JOGI, JIMA, AJMS, Ops Gynae Research, and many more. He has been examiner for MBBS. He has associated with different university also, and he has special interest in urogynecology. He has done 70 publications in national and international journals. He has contributed many chapters in different textbook also. So let us welcome our both the eminent speaker, Dr. Subhash Chandra Biswas and Dr. R.P. Dey. Now the session is with the speakers of ours. So Dr. R.P. Dey will start first.
Good evening, everybody. On behalf of myself, Dr. Subhash Chandra Biswas, and obviously the Torrent Pharmaceutical, I welcome the all webinar view to this important topic of obstetrics. One is the antenatal care as well as the management and prenatal care, which will be subsequently speak by Dr. Professor Subhash Chandra Biswas. All of you know that the pandemic of COVID pandemic is going on. Still, one thing is important: the obstetrics care you cannot deny. So, keeping in mind, we have to go for the prenatal, antenatal, as well as the internatal care. We have to discuss the what is what we are going to the antenatal care we are going on, because we cannot delay the obstetrics is and also an emergency event we have to tackle to face the project. But what is the ideal antenatal care and how can we modify the prenatal care during this COVID pandemic? We want to highlight in these sessions. Though pregnancy is a normal physiological phenomena, you cannot deny though it is a normal physiological phenomena. But important thing is that this physiological suddenly turns into pathological or critical. So interventions and investigations have to be performed. Those intervention and investigation which are the proven benefit you have to do it meticulously, and the obstetricians should know what strategy we follow for the prenatal or antenatal care, which has proven benefit, and should not do the unproven investigations or intervention at this COVID pandemic situation, so that it is to be acceptable to the woman and it is improve the perinatal as well as the maternal outcome. WHO in 2016 has revised its antenatal guidelines. In 2016, many countries has followed these 2016 guidelines, and they have also get benefited. And we, India, having a large population of more than 130 or 135 crores, having high birth rate, we are also following by the different guideline program. Antenatal care is nothing but the systemic supervision of the pregnant woman during his pregnancy as well as the childbirth, to diagnose the early complications as well as the prevent the complications as well as the treatment, so that the healthy baby with a healthy mother can be achieved. Antenatal care is also very critical as well as the crucial in these junctions. This antenatal care will be based upon the related health promotion, disease prevention, screening of the disease to reduce the complication during pregnancy. Ultimate goal is to reduce maternal mortality and morbidity as well as to reduce the stillbirth and perinatal death, which is very high still in our country. Previously, the WHO has focused on the FNOC, that is a focused antenatal care model. This focused antenatal care model is specifically focused during pregnancy, childbirth with a minimum of 4 visits. But WHO has revisited because this focused antenatal care, we have achieved a lot. But one thing is the problem is that still we are far behind in respect of maternal mortality, morbidity, as well as the stillbirth and birth asphyxia. Now this antenatal care, to whom we are catered, this guideline is given to all pregnant women as well as the adolescent girls. So we are catering a large population, at least 30 to 40% of our country population. So we have to follow up our strategy, how to tackle, how to kill these huge antenatal patients to improve the maternal outcome in the form of prevention and treatment of infection, correction and treatment of anemia, early detection of preeclampsia so that the prevention of eclampsia can be done, detection of gestational diabetes mellitus, mode of delivery, whether vaginal delivery or cesarean section in this pandemic situation also, and so many things. And ultimately, we hope to also improve the fetal and neonatal outcome. The fetal and neonatal outcome in the form of prevention and treatment of neonatal cancer, prevention and treatment of low birth weight, preterm birth weight, which will be subsequently discussed by Professor Biswas, as well as the tackling of the congenital anomaly, so that the perinatal outcome can be improved. In 2016's antenatal guidelines, the essential package to all pregnant women and adolescent girls, keeping in mind that there is a few questions is that who are the provider, who are the recipient, and how can we provide this antenatal care so that the complication during pregnancy can be tackled. This can see how the health system can be improved, how the program can be implemented all over the country, what are the barriers to be tackled, and how the test and intervention to individualize. Depending on the individual intervention, antenatal testing to be done, depending on the current scenario, current disease prevalence and other disease prevalence, you have to adopt your models. So keeping in mind, in 2016, WHO has antenatal guidelines, total 40 guidelines has been recommended by the guidelines development of WHO, out of which the 10 guidelines from the other WHO guidelines and total guidelines is 49. And these guidelines include the 14 is the nutritional intervention guidelines, 13 is the maternal and fetal, how we do the maternal and fetal, how frequently and how intervally, how we do the preventive measures of the during pregnancy, and intervention related to common physiological problem, common alignment like nausea, vomiting, leg swelling, and health system improvement, ultimately to improve the maternal and child health in the country. Depending upon there is a 4 different type of recommendation. This all recommendation is not applicable to the all countries. One is the context specific recommendation, where is the specific indication this recommendation are, is the generalized recommendation, and other recommendations are still in research. So obstetricians should know what are the generalized recommendation, what is the context specific recommendation, so that they can modify their antenatal care during the COVID pandemic also. Coming to the nutritional intervention, It is one of the interventions that counseling about the healthy eating and keeping physiological activity is essential. So every pregnant woman should be counseled with a nutritional status, which is basically it is the recommended. And the malnutrition is one of the factors that may precipitate the low birth weight and preterm birth. So this is also recommended, but where there the malnutrition is prevalent. So to undernourished population, balanced energy malnutrition directly reduce the risk of stillbirth. It is also context-specific recommendation. But what is not recommended that in the undernourished population, you should not always prescribe the high protein diet or the protein supplementation or the protein health drink during pregnancy. It is not basically recommended. It doesn't improve the maternal and perinatal outcome also. Yes, coming to the iron and folic acid, yes, pregnancy is an iron deficiency state. There is the absorb 1000 milligram of iron is essential in the form of 500 milligram for the RBC production of the mother itself, 300 for the fetus itself, and 200. So iron supplementation during pregnancy is mandatory. It should be started from as per 16 weeks beyond or 20 after 20 weeks. And the recommended dose is 60 milligram or elemental, depending on the prevalence of iron, the dose can increase. But keeping in mind, the iron is essential. The prophylactic iron therapy and the dose to be increased where there is a pre-existing iron deficiency, and then pre-existing iron deficiency woman can be started iron therapy earlier before 20 weeks. But some women do not tolerate the oral iron, so intermediate iron and folic acid can be started. But this is not a generalized recommendation. This is recommended but the woman cannot tolerate. In these cases, there is option of giving the parental iron therapy in the form of iron sucrose therapy, intravenous route, calculating the dose. In a population with low dietary calcium, the daily calcium supplementation, this is the even WHO guidelines that 150 to 200 milligram oral elemental iron reduce the risk of preeclampsia. So the calcium therapy is mandatory during pregnancy. 150 to 202 gram of calcium is essential during pregnancy period. So it is very, very important that pregnant women should be supplemented, particularly in our country, because the dietary calcium is not adequate. It can be started even as early as first trimester also. So this is a context-specific recommendation. Vitamin deficiency is also context-specific recommendation. Does not given to all women unless there is a prevalence of night blindness or vitamin A deficiency. Zinc supplementation also a context-specific recommendation. Multiple micronutrients is not required during pregnancy. Vitamin B6 supplementation is not required. Regarding coming to the vitamin E and C, this is also not recommended. This is just the antioxidant to prevent the prevention of the preeclampsia. It is not also stabilized, so it is also not recommended. That everybody should prescribe the vitamin B and vitamin C. Coming to the vitamin D supplementation, which has definite role where there is a calcium deficiency. The calcium also, vitamin D also helps in the calcium deficiency state. So along with the calcium, vitamin D can be given. For women with high daily caffeine intake, there is a lowering daily caffeine intake to prevent the low birth weight in pregnancy. This is the context specific. Now coming to the assessment. What are the assessment can be done during pregnancy? Maternal, coming first to the maternal assessment, then later come to the fetal assessment. Yes, during pregnancy, even in the COVID situation, maternal assessment is also mandatory. The full blood count testing, if possible, if not possible, hemoglobin, at least hemoglobin assessment to be done in all patients. The midstream culture, if not possible to be at least the urinary dipstick to exclude the asymptomatic bacteria should be conducted. This is a context-specific differentiation. Where there is a chance of domestic violence, so history or clinical inquiry regarding the intimate violence should be asked during prenatal care. Hyperglycemia in pregnancy, whatever may be form of investigation in your institution or in your country, should be tried to protect either follow the WHO guideline or AICOG or the AICOG guidelines or DIPSI guideline to test the hyperglycemia in pregnancy so that it can be detected early. Healthcare providers should reach all women that tobacco use and as well as the alcohol use is also harmful to the pregnancy, so better to avoid it. This is also recommended. And where in our country, the PPPTCIT program is going on in every hospital, so the HIV screening to be done during pregnancy, it is recommended. Now coming to the tuberculosis, it is not recommended to all countries, but where the prevalence of tuberculosis is more than 100 for 1 lakh population like India, it is better to ask at least the verbal screening or ask whether the history, fever, or cough, or the persistence cough for more than 3 months, more than 3 months, to exclude the tuberculosis during pregnancy. This is also context-specific recommendation. Now coming to the fetal assessment. How we do the fetal assessment? Yes, pregnancy during fetal assessment is mandatory. Daily fetal movement also to be asked to the patient. Cardiac outcome is a very good idea after the 32 weeks or 34 weeks that how the fetal well-being is going on. Now we are practicing abdominal examination. Yes, in the COVID pandemic situation, in all the visits, abdominal examination may not be possible in first trimester or second trimester, but it is mandatory during third trimester beyond. Symphysis-fundal height measurement, though we think it is a better, but as for WHO, the other fundal examination is more important than only measuring the symphysis-fundal height during pregnancy. Now coming to the ultrasonography. Yes, in pregnancy, there's so many guidelines as published, but considering the huge population in our country, it is not possible to do all. But what is WHO guidelines that at least one ultrasound scan before 20 weeks is mandatory to all pregnant women. I am not going to the detail how the ultrasonography scan will be done, but it is as for that one ultrasonography, even in this pandemic situation, is also required. Routine antenatal cardiography is not indicated. Antenatal cardiography or admission to cardiography is not indicated in this pandemic situation unless there is some high risk patient or you have going for the intervention augmentation of pregnancy. In this case, an interpreter monitoring may be required through the cardiography, but antenatal cardiography is not recommended. Color Doppler, yes, routine color Doppler is also not recommended, but where it is needed, where you are suspecting dealing with the case of intrauterine growth retardation or fetal growth retardation, color Doppler is required to managing the pregnancy, even in this pandemic situation also. These are some preventive measures. Where there is asymptomatic bacteria, you have a right to treat the patient. Where there is a recurrent UTI, you also treat the patients. Now, the antenatal anti-D prophylaxis in Rh negative murder to be given to all women where the Coombs test is previously Coombs test is negative or that the fever is not IC-managed previously. It is recommended by 28 and 34 weeks. You may modify your, but at least one dose to be given in antenatal period and the other dose, whatever dose you are given in the prenatal period, it is mandatory due to the postpartum period. In endemic area, the other thing is that is recommended. Tetanus toxoid, whatever maybe you have given, there are 2 doses of tetanus as per the national protocol to be given to the all pregnant women. In the malaria endemic area, the fever may be treated with anti-malarial drug, but it is not, its context not is generalized. The post-exposure prophylaxis or pre-exposure facility for the HMV has to be given to the national guidelines as a NACO protocol. Now coming to some of the physiological alignment in pregnancy, how to tackle with this. There is a lot of things can be used for pregnancy, nausea, vomiting. Ginger can be used in Indian context is very much. Though some study previously shown that gingers have started to debate, but later on it has been clearly that ginger can be used in pregnancy, nausea, vomiting. It is recommended also. And the diet and lifestyle modification, it's some antacid-like substance can be used for the prevention of gastric upset. The leg cramp can be treated with the magnesium, calcium, nothing is required. No specific treatment is required during pregnancy. Regular exercise, physiotherapy is more than enough to prevent pregnancy-induced low back pain as well as the pelvic pain. Non-pharmaceutical intervention also like stocking leggings is also recommended if the patient needs to, if the patient feels for this is recommended. Fiber content supplemented diet can relieve the constipation. Otherwise, no routine prescription of the laxative or purgative is not recommended during pregnancy. Now, some of the health system in 2 countries with the 8th health system improvement Canada, what is new that you can see in the 49 and that what was the WHO focus for antenatal visit. There is a contact visit. Visit can be what is new is that the visit, what is new that visit is now converted into the contact visit, which is also very important during this pandemic situation. All visits should not be directly conducted. There is ICMR guideline who can help the take the telemedicine. What WHO has prescribed initially before 2016, the focus antenatal care, first visit in 8 to 12 weeks, second visit in 24 to 26 weeks, third visit in 32 weeks, and fourth visit in 36 weeks or beyond. That has been replaced by the 8 visits. First visit in 12 weeks, second visit in 20 weeks. You can see that 8 visits. But in this COVID pandemic situation, You may modify your visit, you may defer your visit, but before deferring the antenatal visit, you should contact your doctor or obstetrician which visit you can defer. I am coming to the later how can modify your visit or how the telemedicine will helpful in a COVID pandemic situation. So the new is that contact versus visit. Contact may helpful. Contact may also helpful the direct visit during this season also to provide pregnant women with the response, individualized care, the respectful maternal care will be maintained to promote and provision of relevant and timely information and psychological emotional support also included with clinical and interpersonal skill with well-functioning health system. This is important for all pregnant women. Now coming to the things which are not in the WHO protocol, but thyroid screening contesting in our country is also essential. Now we are getting so many patients hypothyroidism pregnancy, and most of the patients are subclinical hypothyroidism. It was initially thought that the maternal thyroid supplementation was not helpful in the fetal, but later on it is proved the fetal thyroxine is obtained from the mother during the first trimester. So early detection of the hypothyroidism in the first trimester and supplementation, it helps the not only growth of the fetus and helps also prevents the fetal to develop later on the cretinism. So thyroid screening, though the universal screening in this huge country like India is not recommended, but keeping in mind that if you go the selective screening, the job is very tedious because there is no such high risk patient for hypothyroidism. So choice is here whether can go for the universal screening or you can go for the selective screening. But thyroid screening is necessary, maybe necessary. Now coming to the yes, universal screening also recommended in population like India because a high prevalence of thalassemia screening. Depending on the screening, partner have a choice for the confirmation stage and subsequently termination of pregnancy. Now coming to the aneuploidy screening. Now coming to the aneuploidy screening, the aneuploidy how much we can do during this situation also. Yes, the high risk screening is recommended. It is not recommended that all patients should be first time screening for the aneuploidy, but age above the 35 and previous history of Down syndrome. These two things is important, but keeping in mind the 70% Downs can occur in young women also. So it is also not universalized. There is no such also. Though the UC has different guideline, I'm coming to later how we can go for the screening for the Down syndrome patients. You can say that the screening for the Down syndrome age of the population is important. Try to screen for the if it is high risk, go for the first trimester, depending on the first trimester ultrasonography or FST or the first trimester combined test. If it is high risk, go for the invasive stage. It is low risk, no action can be taken. This is UC guideline. Though International Society for Obstetrics first trimester ultrasonography is mandatory to all, but this is not practical in our country also. But it is individualized practice. You can do it or not do it, depends upon you. NIV, non-invasive perinatal testing in the first time of clinic test, direct invasive test when background risk is high, and combined test are the screen positive. This is the flow chart. How can do combined test and the risk calculation. The low risk, nothing can be done. But if there is high risk for the non-invasive test, low risk continue the pregnancy. If the high risk, again for the confirmation. But in this condition of COVID pandemic, serious and abnormal state synthesis is also a dilemma how to do it and how much it is accepted. Now coming to the my important part, considering the antenatal care and this is the what I am now talking about that the ideal condition. What is the WHO has said to do is antenatal care. Now this antenatal, that is the 8 contact visit or the focus antenatal care or all the things. How can we do in this COVID situation? How can we modify our antenatal and internatal care? Yes, novel coronavirus is a new strain in the world. The first identified in one city, but it is spread all over the world. This characteristics almost all over the world. These characteristics, especially those of the percent to percent documented in December 2019. India first detected case in the 30th January in Kerala, and in West Bengal where I am sitting, there they detected case in the 20th March. The COVID-19 strain of the coronavirus infection high rate of transmission by droplet infection. This is declared as a WHO at the pandemic in 11th March 2020. There is even but few months has passed that we have experienced, the India has experienced more from the 30th January to more than 4 to 5 months, but still we have no concrete evidence-based guidelines how to give the internatal and antenatal and internatal care during COVID pregnancy. There is no such. Though the ICMR and the FOXC has given some guidelines, and Government of India has given a guideline but different guidelines are different. But what is the important thing during COVID in pregnancy, the classification of the disease in COVID in pregnancy, most of the patient is asymptomatic. We working in a government medical college, here most of the person, I can say it is more than 70 to 80% patient is admitted, is asymptomatic patient. Patient does not have any symptom at all. If the patient, we can take the history, they do not have any travel history also, but what is suggestive, they're coming from the containment zone. If on the basis of which we can go for the testing, we can find that at least 6 to 7% of the patients are the COVID test positive by RT-PCRs. So the asymptomatic patient is a big major number. Then coming to the other group with the mild illness or moderate illness, it can compromise in pregnancy less than around 10% of the patients. They have sign symptom, fever, cough, throat. They are not specific, non-specific. They do not have any shortness of breath, dyspnea, or abnormal chest pain. The very less than 5% of the patient have severe illness or critical illness. Severe illness means the respiratory frequency more than 30 beats per minute, SpO2 less than 93 at room air, and there is also partial exposure of oxygen fraction improved, and there is a lung infected on more than 50% on radiological investigation. And there is another group is less than 1% respiratory failure, septic shock, and multi-organ failure. We do not have that much of patients in the severe or critical, but we have a frequently asymptomatic patient. Then we are also in dilemma how to keep them in the isolation ward or segregation ward. Before diagnosis, patient comes only with the pregnancy symptom and incidentally detected there. So what is our guidelines? Antenatal care is that the woman should be advised to attend routine antenatal care, but the antenatal care be tailor-made. All the patient does not require the 8 contact visit. So maternal care could be given 12, 20, 28, or 36 weeks. Unless they have no complication, they should not give the more frequent visit antenatal care. Rather, they contact with the treating doctor over the telephone. Now the telemedicine is permissible and permitted for the patients can contact with the doctor. For women who had symptoms, appointment can be deferred until all the symptoms for COVID, the appointment can be deferred until 7 weeks after the start of symptoms. Unless the symptoms become severe, then do not come to the doctor or safe. You needed to visit the healthcare, that they take a transport of a personal or call 108. Do not use the common vehicle for the ambulance to come to the hospital. For women who are self-quarantined because of some in their husband has possible symptom, appointments should be deferred for the 14 days if possible. Moreover, any antenatal visit, particularly in the first and the second trimester, can be delayed by more than 3 weeks. There will be no problem if the patient does not have any acute emergency. Even a woman has previously tested negative, this patient can later on having symptomatic, and this patient also suspected for COVID-19. They should also follow the same antenatal guidelines. Referral to antenatal ultrasound service for fetal growth is recommended after 14 days of following the resolution of the acute symptom. So it is better to avoid the growth scan during this suspected or during this 14 days period of exposure. Prenatal care prevention is better than, so pregnant women should have follow the social distancing and all the hygienic measurement which is given by the ICMR guideline. Pregnant patients with an epidemiological history of contact with a person's COVID-19 should be self-isolated and also monitor for symptoms. Should be self-isolated and monitor for symptoms. The incubation periods for up to 14 days and diagnostic tests to be done, but depending on the now how the diagnostic test. The ICMR initial guidelines was the any patient from the containment zone you can do for the COVID test if they are also asymptomatic or if the patient having delivery within 5 days. But now the guidelines have changed. Whether you can go for the asymptomatic screening for the COVID RT-PCRs, it is depends upon the you have the facility, you can do it or you cannot do it, because now the guidelines for the pregnancy testing for the COVID is now little bit of flexible. Routine prenatal care to be in uninfected one to be modified as which I have already told. If a patient have a suspected COVID patient, information to be shared with the pregnant woman. If you are infected with the COVID-19, you are still most likely have no symptom or mild, do not worry. Stay home, which will make a full recovery. If you develop more severe symptom or recovery is delayed, then might develop a more significant chest symptom that requires enhanced care. You should contact with maternity team immediately. There will be a need to reduce the number of antenatal, which I have alluded to. However, you should not reduce your antenatal visit by your own yourself, but consulting doctor should give you the how can you modify your antenatal visit. Now coming to the general consideration which can be followed with all suspected pregnant women have the childbirth, so it is better to contact with the secondary and tertiary labor delivery where the isolated ward, isolated delivery facility, isolated is available for the pregnant women for the COVID-19. The superintendent of all secondary and tertiary care hall will notify a nodal person with mobile number, and pregnant women should be consent whether the bed is available for admitting the patient. Pregnant women should be attend antenatal clinic, triage and emergency by the what every obstetrician while you are suspecting with the COVID-19 patient. Use as per appropriate PPE as per the ICMR guidelines, which is applicable in the clinical setting, triaging and the emergency. Do not take it lightly the PPE before examining the patients. So health staff providing obstetric must wear personal protective equipment, take all precautions as per the government guidelines, particularly the ICMR guidelines. In pregnancy in COVID-19, social distancing importance also follow the other 5, the stay at home, hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, avoiding touching the face, keeping distance from the other persons. Clinical presentation in COVID-19, most of the patients I have already told asymptomatic, that condition does not deteriorate suddenly, but keeping in mind, you have some of the facility to tackling the 1 to 2% cases where the critical care facilities is needed. COVID-19 is a notification disease. As soon as the diagnosis is confirmed, it should be the state nodal officers. Maternal disease does not identify by pregnancy. There is no evidence that transplacental passage of the COVID from the mother to the fetus, and during the birth canal, it is not also transmitted to the fetus. But the evidence is also rapidly changing. Assessment of the pregnant woman not in labor with COVID infection is not necessary. Patient should be admitted in the normal labor ward. Recognize the critical ill patient, most women need the hospitalization, but admission criteria is that if the patient is not in labor, still the patient having some symptom like tachypnea more than 30, hypoxia, if the patient having an imaging radiological facility more than 50%, they need to put the critical care isolation ward, not in general isolation ward. Pregnant women coming to the imaging and triage should be immediately escorted to the isolation room, directly have entry from the triage to the isolation room. Minimum number of the essential staff, health staff, doctor, nurse with proper PPE to examine the patients. Isolation should be ideally have an antechamber for healthcare provider for donning and doffing of the PPE and mask. There should be also washroom facility. Once settled in the isolation room, assessment of the maternal fetal condition, symptom of difficulty in breath or the COVID related to be done as per the national guidelines. Now, measure coming to the pregnant woman to prevent the COVID infections. This is the same thing as the general population, nothing else. The stay at home, stay at home, stay at home, use masks, keep a distance, keep your respirator healthy. All these things, you have a less chance during pregnancy. But pregnant women are special category in terms of healthcare and possibility of more susceptible. They should therefore follow stay at home as much as possible. Routine antenatal procedure can be deferred only to at least 2 to 3 weeks can be deferred. There is no need of every time visit, no need of 8-point contact. You can have contact with doctors with the telemedicine, but if it is necessary visit to be done, at first telemedicine can be by the NCR guideline. Keep the traffic home visitor restricted. Wash your hands frequently, properly with soap and water or hand sanitizer at least minimum for 20 seconds. Covering their mouth and nose with the bent elbow, not with the palm. During the coughing and sneezing, face should be avoid face touching with eye, nose, and face. Space should be keep a distance at 1 meter. This is the all general principle have to follow to all women. Effect of now I have already told the research has suggested the maternal disease does not get aggravated during pregnancy unless there is a comorbidity. So the pregnancy does not have a pregnancy with COVID has not had the aggravated condition unless there is a comorbidity. There is no evidence of transplacental spread of the fetus and fetal abnormality or compromised facial due to COVID in pregnancy. So one thing is clear, the COVID does not aggravate the pregnancy-related syndrome, or pregnancy does not aggravate in general the COVID-related symptom. Assessment of pregnant women in northern liver, asymptomatic patients should be quarantined, as per the government guideline, they can stay at home or can the quarantine center, or as per your state guideline, you admit the patient. Symptomatic patient needs the proper care. The medical management will consult with the medical care facility that the drug, all the drug can be used, most of the drug can be used safely during pregnancy, which is being treated in Indian non-pregnant women like hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and lopinavir. But prescribing this drug, we should consult the physician, consult the chest specialist on medicine or the COVID specialist in your hospital before prescribing drug to the pregnant woman. Now, management, little bit of international care, infection control measure is essential. Pre-hospital notification of possible infection, evaluation of all patients presenting to the hospital is mandatory. All the healthcare sort of the protective care during labor and delivery, care of the COVID patient, inpatient supporting measure for labor and route of delivery. It is not the COVID is not deciding factor for the route of delivery. COVID-19 is not an indication to alter the route of delivery. Patient can have vaginal delivery, patient can have instrumental delivery, vaginal, and patient can have cesarean section. Cesarean delivery is performed for standard obstetric indication, not that patient has a acute decomposition of mother with COVID-19. This is not indicated for the cesarean section. Labor room management, the same protocol to be followed, management of labor in altered pregnancy given birth as like as a non-COVID patients. Yes, you can start rooming in. No evidence that COVID-19 secret in the breast milk, but depending on the hospital protocol, some of the hospitals are providing rooming in the mothers. Baby can breastfeed, but mother can take also the proper wearing mask and properly health hygiene as well as the respiratory hygiene. Some of the hospitals also not prescribing the rooming in. They are keeping the baby to the neonatal unit or nursery out from the mother. It depends upon the particular hospital. There is no such guidelines that which we follow the breastfeeding in COVID-19 pregnancy. So before conclusion, the antenatal care and COVID-19 pandemic, I have told so many things regarding that. What is the modify is that there is a need some modification during COVID pandemic situation. 8 ideal antenatal visit can be reduced to 4. You can delay the antenatal visit to 3 weeks. If the patient has the symptoms or present the contact, they cannot come to the antenatal care for at least 14 days. If not emergency required, if the patient have a history or there is a contact positive, they should be treated in a tertiary or secondary care center or the isolated facility, keeping in mind that all the healthcare workers take the proper protective during managing the pregnancy, and regarding the intranatal care, whether the mode of delivery is not detected by the vaginal delivery or the LUCS depending on the obstetrical indications. So in short, this is the antenatal care, the ideal antenatal care, as well as the what can we modify during the COVID pregnancy. I hope there is a little bit of modifications so that you should have some exposure and idea how to manage the ideal antenatal converting in the hospital where you are dealing with a suspected COVID pregnancy. Thank you all for your patience hearing. Thank you all. Thank you. This is the question answer session will be done later. Now I invite another important speaker, Professor Subhash Chandra Vishwas. He will be going to. I have just highlighted some of the antenatal care, but he will discuss on focus topic of preterm. Yes, may I invite Dr. Vishwas? Now we can start. Later on, we will go for the question and answer session. Thank you everybody, every the webinars. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, so thanks, Dr. Ramprasad De, for your exhaustive lecture. I think by this time, the preterm mothers are going to be rather post-term. So just to start with a very lighter sense, I think that every participant in the state and outside the state, they are with me, all my senior, junior colleagues, my students, my friends, and the important participants from the pharmaceutical company, particularly this topic, which has got a major public health problem in not only in India but also globally, with the active help of the pharmaceutical company, that is your Torrent Pharma, particularly Mr. Amit and Ms. Tejaswini. So thanks for the platform to share my experience as well as the current management option to highlight on preterm labor. The preterm labor is defined by WHO as babies born alive before 37 weeks of gestation. But it has got several subcategories nowadays. Extremely preterm are those babies who are born before 28 weeks but are able to survive. The cutoff law limit may be 22 weeks, maybe 24 weeks, as per your NICU facilities in your center or in your country. And the very preterm is between 28 to 32 weeks. Moderate to late preterm, that is 32 to 34 weeks. It is the late preterm. It is the moderate preterm, and the late preterm is 34 to the completed 37th week. All right, we can find 11% of infants are born preterm, and leading to the major cause of perinatal morbidity and mortality. It is the second most common cause, even death of infants in children under 5 years of age, just second common to pneumonia. This creates a havoc public health problem, and we can see in all the countries, even in UK, even in US, to help those babies to survive prematurely, the cost is huge. It is 2.96 billion pound per year in UK, and in US that is more than 26 billion dollar. Half of these cases are spontaneous. If we can divide the preterm delivery into clinical situation, then it may be spontaneous, it may be iatrogenic or indicated delivery due to some other cause like placenta previa, like IUGR. So those are the indicated cases. Those babies are born by iatrogenic condition, but most of the cases are spontaneous. If we go for etiological classification, then 50% of the cases, even we don't know what is the cause, but the causes are multifactorial, and the single most common cause is previous history of induced or spontaneous abortion or preterm delivery, in addition to the recent increase in the gestation by artificial reproductive technology, asymptomatic bacteria, smoking habits, low socioeconomic status, maternal stress, complications in pregnancy, uterine anomalies, cervical factor, genital tract infection, then some medical illness like preeclampsia, some surgical illness. Even there are fetal factors, placental factors, and idiopathic causes already I have told, in addition to iatrogenic condition. The cause is premature uterine contraction. So that uterine contraction is due to the background knowledge is inflammation or infection leading to upsurge of interleukin 1, 6, 8 and decrease in the anti-inflammatory interleukin 10, along with the tumor necrosis factor, which is also increased, leading to chorioresidual stimulation and leading to this uterotonic action on the musculature, leading to premature myometrial contraction and ultimately preterm labor. Those patients must have certain predisposing conditions, or all I have highlighted while telling the etiology. So whenever the patient comes, we have to find out who is at risk. We have to have a quick review of the reproductive history, antenatal history, and all those fetal factors along with the lifestyle issues of the mother. Suppose this lady, 26 years, she is second gravida with previous on preterm delivery, presents to trials with contraction of the uterus at 29 weeks and 6 days. What is our initial workup? What we have to do? You go by the clinical scenario. First thing is counseling of the mother. Explain about the clinical assessment and diagnostic tests that are available, how the clinical assessment and diagnostic tests are carried out, what are the risks and benefits, and the possible consequences that we have to discuss. To cleanse the diagnosis, we have to take the clinical history and the physical examination thoroughly, including parasitical examination and vaginal examination in indicated cases. If the clinical assessment suggests that the woman is in suspected preterm, consider transvaginal sonography for measurement of cervical length, and then additional diagnostic tests to determine likelihood of birth within 48 hours. That means she is in real established preterm labor.
Hello.
Yeah. Any
Yes,
problem?
I can see the question. There is a 5 question. I will go.
The question will be taken at the end. Okay. Let me finish.
You see asymptomatic role. Yes. I will give answer. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I will give answer. Yes.
Dr. De, cervical length measurements can be used to identify the increased risk of preterm birth in asymptomatic women below 24 weeks. And mind it that the cervical length measurement, we should not press too much. It should not be in empty, in full bladder, rather in empty bladder. And the minimum examination time should be 3 minutes. We should not be in hurry to measure the cervical length accurately. If the cervical length is more than 1.5 centimeter, it is unlikely she is in preterm labor, and think about alternative diagnosis, allow domiciliary treatment, but advise her to return to the hospital if symptoms persist or recur. But if the cervical length is less than 1.5 centimeter, view the woman she is in preterm labor and offer treatment. Biochemical markers to diagnose additional fetal fibronectin. This is to determine likelihood of birth within 48 hours if previous measurement of cervical length is not available. The results will be negative if the concentration is less than 15 nanogram per milliliter, or positive if the concentration is more than 15 nanogram per milliliter, and in those cases, we should offer treatment for preterm labor. Therapies used in preterm labor are many. First thing, the risk assessment and the preventive measures includes progesterone therapy, cervical circulase, antibiotics, steroids, and the tocolytics have different role along with magnesium sulfate. But there are so many risk assessment. We will go and take up the issues one by one. If we want to delay the uterine contractions, then the tocolytic agent should be used, but there is no ideal tocolytic that it should be uterus-specific, short-term as well as the long-term effect, having safety measures both for the mother and the fetus. It is affordable, and the evidence-based medicine has approved it. Then we can use that. But the main idea in our setup till date is should delay the birth and allow the fetus to transfer in utero. The steroid should have time to act on, and the Maxal therapy, particularly for the neuroprotection. Otherwise, all the tocolytics, they act through inhibition of the uterine contractions, be it calcium channel blocker, be it magnesium sulfate. The calcium entry is less, then the calcium release from the sarcoplasmic reticulum is less, so there is inhibition of contraction. And prostaglandin synthetase inhibitors that also act through the same way, prostaglandin F2 alpha reduction, leading to the less amount of calcium for contraction. there is no beta-adrenergic, ideal beta-adrenergic receptors, and it has got much side effects, so we don't use this. Rather, nitric oxide donor is used nowadays that acts through cyclic GMP and acting on the actin myosin, that's interaction leading to inhibition of contraction. But the newer one is oxytocin receptor antagonist, that is atosiban, that has become more ideal nowadays. We can classify the drugs, but those drugs, to know, interestingly, those are licensed initially for some other purpose and was found to inhibit the contraction of the myometrium. And we should have a safety profile, and so that we should have a thorough knowledge of all these drugs, including the calcium channel blocker, and as well as the nitric oxide donor and the atosiban, what I have told. We should know the side effects, we should know the specific contraindication. The atosibation is taking the upper hand because the main contraction of the myometrium is caused by oxytocin, and the usual pathway of actin myosin interaction by plenty of calcium activating the calgonidin calcium complex and leading to this contraction. So if the oxytocin receptor antagonist is used, that path is blocked, and that should be the ideal tocolytic nowadays. And this atosiban should be used in a loading dose followed by maintenance dose. And there is study which is published in the International Journal of OBG that the atosiban has got greater efficacy as well as the safety measures in addition to nifedipine. But what the NICE guidelines says, the NICE guidelines consider nifedipine for tocolysis for women between 24 to 34 weeks. 24 to 34 weeks who have intact membranes or have suspected or diagnosed preterm labor, just to delay the contraction for the purpose what I have told. But we should know the specific contraindications according to the side effect. Also, we should not consider tocolytics if there is baby with pre-viable gestational age. There is congenital malformation, lethal, and cannot survive ex utero, intrauterine fetal death, or at this moment there is non-deteriorating fetal status and presence of chorioamnionitis, then premature rupture of membrane or preterm pre-liver rupture of membrane or maternal contraindications, what I have told, then we should not think of this. But there is definite role of corticosteroid in preterm labor in between 24 weeks, that is 23 weeks, 6 days to 34 weeks. But 34 to 36 weeks, it is optional. You are in suspected or established preterm labor, but it has got its additional advantage even in this group of babies. Why corticosteroids? The steroids are less extensively metabolized by the placental enzyme, that is 11-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. So this is used for the lung maturation of the fetus and formation of the surfactant. We used to use betamethasone, that is 12 milligram at 24 hours apart. Now dexamethasone is used because betamethasone salt, which is available in our country, is betamethasone acid phosphate, which is biologically it is not that much active. Which we need is betamethasone acetate. So dexamethasone, what is available, is cheaper, and it should be given 4 doses, 6 milligram, 12 hours apart. And that is ideal time is 23 weeks, 6 days to 34 weeks. before that, the babies are taken, at least in our country, pre-viable. Yeah, after 34 weeks, you can use just not only to reduce the RDS, but also to reduce the intraventricular hemorrhage and the cerebral palsy. Magnesium sulfate, in addition to its tocolytic effect, it is used in babies in between 24 to 34 weeks, but the ideal recommendation is up to 32 weeks for neuroprotection in established preterm labor or having a planned preterm birth within 24 hours. We should give 4 gram intravenous bolus of magnesium sulfate over 10 minutes, and then in addition, we have to maintain the infusion by 1 gram per hour until the birth of the fetus. It has got post-hypoxic glutamate-mediated neurotoxic antagonism effect. Then coming to progesterone supplementation, it is used in the prevention of preterm birth from decades. Exact mechanism of action is not known, but it has got anti-inflammatory action that may counteract the inflammatory process that is involved in initiation of labor, what I have told, and also changes in the progesterone receptor, so that it has got its action both at the cervix, at the myometrium, and in the cervix. It suppresses inflammatory response and myometrial contractility. At the amniotic sac, it limits the prostaglandin production. Then at the myometrium, at the fetal membrane, it blocks the pro-inflammatory cytokine-induced apoptosis, preventing PPURM, and even in the placenta, it regulates timing of labor via controlling stress hormone, that is CRAs. So ultimately, it decreases conduction of contraction, increases threshold for stimulation, decrease spontaneous activity, decrease the number of oxytocin receptors, and thus prevents your preterm labor, preterm contraction by formation of gap junction. There are several studies. Progesterone is effective, that is true, but the questions remains at what dose, which preparation, how long, that is when to start and when to finish. There are a lot of studies, starting from the Australian Association, the NICE guideline, FIGO, then your ACOG, even Canadian Society for Obstetrics Gynecology. They have outlined in so many ways. But what is the summary? The summary is, if there are criteria like history of preterm birth or no preterm birth, but a sonographically identified short cervix less than 2.5 centimeter, then we should use it. But which preparation? Injectable or your vaginal preparation or oral preparations? The ACOG and Society for Maternal Fetal, they have used 17-hydroxyprogesterone caproate, that is given intramuscular weekly injection 250 milligram from 16 to 26 weeks. And that is recommended by American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology in 2012. They have done a robust study, and they are able to show that vaginal progesterone is recommended as a management option to reduce the risk of preterm birth in asymptomatic women with a singleton gestation, without a prior preterm birth, with an incidentally identifiable very short cervical length, that is less than 2 centimeters at 24 weeks. Progesterone treatment doesn't reduce the incidence of preterm birth in multiple gestation. Insufficient evidence exists if we combine progesterone along with cervical circulase. There are a lot of studies. They have shown that the progesterone therapy significantly reduces the risk of preterm birth before 34 weeks, along with significant reduction of neonatal mortality and morbidity. Progesterone, there are different preparations. Already I have told: injection, suppository, gel, oral capsule. But this injection, 17-alpha-hydroxyprogesterone caproate, is approved by US FDA, and that is given by intramuscular injection. There are several studies by maternal fetal medicine unit taking many samples, and they are able to show that they are able to reduce the preterm birth or prolongation of gestational age before 32 weeks, before 35 weeks, even before 37 weeks. And progesterone prevents neonatal complications also. So compliance safety is established by use of intramuscular injection of 17-alpha-progesterone capride. The meta-analysis is done by Kars, MG et al., and they have also seen by the calculation of odds ratio that it results in reduction of preterm birth. There are a lot of studies focusing on neonatal outcome as well as the reduction of the preterm birth. I am not going into details of all the studies. Even American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, they have published in 2019 October the clinical guidance, the trial comparing the efficacy of this with placebo, and they have established, taking many samples, that women who are randomized between 16 to 20 weeks of gestation and by the short cervical length are able to reduce the preterm birth. There are studies, lot of studies. I'm not going into details. What the NICE guideline drafting 2019 have concluded. They have even given weightage to vaginal progesterone with history of spontaneous preterm birth or mid-trimester loss between 16 to 34 weeks of pregnancy who have the cervical length less than 2.5 centimeter. When using vaginal progesterone, start treatment between 16 to 24 weeks as per the NICE guideline and continue until 34 weeks. The Society of Fetal Medicine, they have stressed upon the same thing, but they have given weightage to 17-hydroxyprogesterone capride, that intramuscular injection. Then role of sarcolemmas in prevention of preterm birth. ACOG 2016 concluded that in women with a singleton pregnancy with prior spontaneous preterm birth before 24 weeks of pregnancy and the cervical length less than 2.5 centimeter, we can go by 3 ways. History indicated, that means who has got the previous history, the best place between 12 to 14 weeks. Ultrasound indicated this pregnancy, we have got the cervical length less than 1.5 centimeter versus 2.5 centimeter. In both the cases, in early and late, we can go for sarcolemma operation. And the physical examination indicated, that is the digital examination or perispeciculum examination, just showing bulging membrane. In those cases, we can go for rescue sarcolemma. But do not offer rescue sarcolemma to women with signs of infection, with active vaginal bleeding, or established uterine contraction, which is destined to deliver within 24 hours. There are a lot of cervical sarcolemma operation, but we usually do McDonald and the Shirodkar. Shirodkar is utilized for the short cervix. How does it act? It may provide structural strength to short or weak cervix, assist in protecting from ascending pathogen by creating a mucus plug in the cervix, by creating the immunological and the biochemical barrier. NICE guideline, they have told the prophylactic cervical sarcolemma for women when results of TBS scan carried out between 16 and 24 weeks showing the cervical length 2.5 centimeter and who had either preterm pre-liver rupture of membrane in a previous pregnancy or a history of cervical trauma due to any other cause, then we should do it. Should we use antibiotic in preterm birth? No, it is not commonly used, and it is not evident that it reduces the preterm birth unless there is PP or PROM or PPROM, that is preterm pre-liver rupture of membrane. If it is preterm pre-liver rupture of membrane or PROM, how the diagnosis is achieved? achieved by maternal history, followed by sterile speculum examination, ultrasound examination to confirm the diagnosis, sometimes digital examination, but that should be avoided where there is free flow of fluid and the rupture is there, you can find. And if there is suspected, then you can use the additional test, that is the biomarkers by vaginal swab. But if there is free flow, we should not do that test. What antenatal test should be performed? Women should be observed for signs of clinical chorioamnitis at least 12 hourly. A weekly vaginal swab and at least a weekly maternal food blood count should be considered. For monitoring, we have to use cardiotocography for the fetus, but it should not be considered as the regular fetal surveillance. BPB and Doppler velocimetry should not be considered as the first-line surveillance for fetal infection. Amniocentesis is not indicated. If results of the biomarkers, that is insulin-like growth factor binding protein or the placental microglobulin, placental alpha microglobulin test are negative, then amniotic fluids should have a free flow, then it is diagnosis. But if these are negative, do not offer antenatal prophylactic antibiotics. Explain to the woman that it's unlikely that she has PROM, but she should return if she has further symptoms or there is established PROM again. Do not use nitrogen test. Do not perform diagnostic test for PROM if liver becomes established. Prophylactic antibiotic in case of rupture of membrane, erythromycin 250 mg orally 6 hourly should be given for 10 days, or in case of allergic cases, other drug, and that should be continued in established till the established liver, whichever is sooner. Amoxiclav should not be used because of necrotizing enterocolitis. Antibiotic therapy has no role in the treatment of acute preterm liver in the absence of documented infection or rupture of membrane or GBS infection. Do not use one of the following in isolation to confirm or exclude intrauterine infection like C-reactive protein or white blood cell count. That should be in combination along with your clinical scenario of your paraabdominal examination. And there is a beautiful chart when we should go for any active intervention or expectant management. Expectant management should offer whenever the baby has attained viability, 24 weeks to 34 weeks, obviously expectant management so that we can prolong it. But after 34 weeks, we should deliver it. No GBS prophylaxis in the pre-viable condition, but in viable condition, we can use that. Steroids as usual, magnesium sulfate for neuroprotection, again after 34 weeks in the viable babies, and no tocolysis should be given. That woman, what we have started, we start with our talk. Now she has progressed by this time with our all efforts. She has gone into full dilatation within 6 hours. What should be our consideration in this case? The mode of delivery. To determine the mode of delivery, we have to individualize the case and follow the NICE guidelines only for offering cesarean section. Interpartum monitoring is very important to highlight few points. Do not use a fetal scalp electrode for fetal heart rate monitoring, and do not carry out any fetal blood sampling if the woman is less than 34 weeks. Discuss with women the possible use of fetal blood sampling between 34 to 37th week if the benefits are likely outweigh the risk. Delivery management, important consideration for preterm delivery, contact NICU, multidisciplinary approach should be there, no vacuum below 34 weeks, controlled head extension, and delayed cord clamping. That we have to keep in mind the baby might need your transfusion, then there is less chance of hypotension if you go for delayed cord clamping, as well as the anemia, intraventricular hemorrhage, and the neonatal mortality will be less. Methods of delayed cord clamping, at least wait for 30 seconds, but no longer than 3 minutes. Then you decide to transfer the baby whether to mature baby unit or to NICU or SNCU. Having said all this and having all these discussions, only a couple of weeks back, a lady came to me, 36 years, third gravida with previous 2 spontaneous abortion, and this time she had undergone IVF pregnancy, got twin, but at 32 weeks she came with preterm pre-labor rupture of membrane. She is on low dose aspirin. You think of the high risk factor. On of the pregnancy previously was also ectopic. Then she had undergone myomectomy, laparoscopy followed by laparotomy for chocolate cyst operation. Husband is lawyer. So USC determined the twin on 1.6 kg and the twin to 1.8 kg, but virtually no liquor in sac on, and there is adequate liquor in sac too. Now the problem, there is no evidence of infection at this moment. That is true, but steroid has given only 4 hours back. It is not fully active because steroid to act, it needs 24 hours. And the ideal time to terminate in those cases is 24 to 48 hours, at least within 7 days. She has got reassuring fetal heart rate. Then what to do? Should you wait to take up the aspirin action to have the action of your steroid, or the one fetus is already in danger, we should take out? So I was with the intention of at least a few hours to complete the dose of steroid, but what happened? You see, the pediatrician just consoled me, carry on. So I took the risk, revised my opinion and did sections at 16 hours. Having all these problems of ill-formed lower segment, radiations, and because of previous surgery and delivering the second breech, everything, that was a real challenging cesarean section even, but we are able to deliver the babies alive and they were fine. They are now surviving with breastfeeding. So the ways to avoid the risk of preterm labor, the take-home measures should be gain healthy weight before pregnancy, avoid smoking, alcohol, drugs, do first prenatal checkup as soon as pregnancy is confirmed, get chronic health condition treated fast, protect yourself from infection always, reduce stress, and keep time period of at least 18 months in between 2 pregnancies. And because we are very worried about the preterm birth, the babies are not that much intelligent. That is your idea, that is our idea, and everyone is very much anxious for that. But think of this gentleman. On December 25th, 1642, when a widow gave birth prematurely to a male child, his mother described that child was so small that he could have been put into a coat of mud. The infant survived and grew to be Sir Isaac Newton. So don't be upset. Even we have hope if we can save those babies. Thank you. Thank you all for your patient hearing. Hello.
Hello,
Everybody is sleeping, I think so.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Any question in your question box?
Yes.
Just start. If the question is directed to me, just let me know.
Hello.
Hello, if the question is directed to me, just let me know.
Yes, there is some question.
Role of
There is some
progesterone in
question.
preterm.
Yes, there is
Yes,
some question to me and as well as to you. So should I start from our question or your question?
Just finish 2-3 questions with me. As it has discussed just now, someone has
Yes.
asked Priyanka Chaturvedi, sir, can steroid be safely given for preterm labor in a COVID positive pregnant women? Yes, yes, it can be given because there is no harm of steroid using in case of COVID situation. Okay, and
Yes.
what else? Someone is role of progesterone in preterm labor. I hope Dr. Subroto has listened to me and progesterone. Thank you for the question, Dr. Subroto. And I hope that that has been outlined by me very nicely. And if there is any further question, you contact with me. I will tell you again in details. Then any other question? Then certain Dr.
Hello.
Yes. Then role of progesterone in preterm labor. Already I have told the several studies are there. How does it act? It acts at a different level. Then Tomisha Panigrahi have shown the role of encirclement operation in modern obstetrics. Yes, there are indicated cases where we can do it with previous history, with no sign of infection, no rupture of membrane, the cervical length less than 2.5 centimeter before 24 weeks, along with your previous history. Then we should go for. What is the best time for circulars? I have told you there are 3 ways. One is the history indicated. In that case, we can go prophylactically between 12 to 14 weeks. If it is ultrasound indicated, whenever it is detected, if you use it rescue and circulars, then in those cases, your examination, the vaginal examination, whenever you have seen the membrane bulging.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, there is some question to me also.
Yes. You just finish those, then I will come again the other few questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Some question from Balakrishna. He has asked me the asymptomatic case and role of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. I have already told that the most of the obstetrics patients are asymptomatic, more than 80% patients. But if the patient is COVID positive, what I have told, I have not said that you should give azithromycin or hydroxychloroquine combination. It is your state or ICMR guidelines. What I am trying to say that you should consult with the physicians, and there is no contraindication for giving azithromycin as well as the hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine you can give pregnancy, no problem, 400 milligram for BD for 5 days, and you also consulting your physician for the azithromycin. And one thing you keep in mind, the patient have no comorbidity, there is no problem to prescribe this drug. If you think there is some comorbidity, you have do a ECG, baseline ECG. If the baseline ECG shows the QT interval is less than 400, there is no such problem or audit thing, you can easily prescribe the hydroxychloroquine. Now, another question from somebody from this Monorama join has asked me if the patient is 39 weeks of gestation and the patient is COVID positive, what to do? Yes, if the patient is nearer to term 39 weeks, that means patient is the term, but it is in the early term, and the patient is COVID-19. So no need to go for the immediate intervention, induction, or do anything if there is a not obstetric indication is there. You can wait for the delivery at least for 40 weeks, 41 weeks plus, what is called with the full-term pregnancy. And by this time, the patient may be of COVID problem will be resolved by 14 days, and patient may be also negative. Then the healthcare worker can easily give him hard support as well as the care adequately as well as the non-COVID patient. What I am trying to say, if the patient do not have immediately delivery is needed, necessary, you can wait for that time in a 39 weeks pregnancy if the patient is COVID positive. Up to 40 weeks plus or 40 up to 41 weeks, you can wait for the delivery. Someone has asked, what is that is Omkur Vishwas from Calcutta, he asks, how is the chance of vertical transmission in COVID-19 pregnancy? Yes, this is a big issue, whether there is a chance of vertical, but still most of the evidence suggested that there is no such evidence for vertical transmission, even there is no such transmission in the vaginal delivery. But another, also there is some few reported case, the patient has delivered, the newborn baby has developed the IgG is positive, IgG is positive, IgG is positive. So that means the patient might have developed the some of the infection from the. This is a few reported cases, but in general there is no such vertical transmissions. Yes, am I right? Yes.
Okay, someone asked Dr.
Yes.
Day, someone has
Yes.
asked role of magnesium and dose in preterm labor. I have told that the magnesium sulfate can be used as your tocolytic, but here up to 32 weeks, it is used for neuroprotection. And the dose is 4 gram loading dose followed by 1 gram per hour. Then any asymptomatic, you have already told.
Yes. And the answer to another thing is that this you have already told the preterm labor and COVID patient and steroid. There is no problem. Moreover, what I am additionally said that in India we are giving steroid in the 34 before 34 is either dexamethasone or betamethasone. But the betamethasone is, everybody knows, is not available. The acetate and phosphate role everybody knows. So what we are giving the dexamethasone. Moreover, that study has published in COVID patient, the dexamethasone is helpful in a COVID symptomatic patient also, where there is a cardiopulmonary compromise. So this all giving steroid for the rescue of the fetus, the antenatal corticosteroid might have also helpful to the patient herself also, though the dose is not same. I hope so. Yes.
Yes, Amit
Hello.
has. Hello, Dr. Ram.
Yes.
Amit has raised a question for show us the neuroprotective dose of Maxa. The neuroprotective dose already I have told, that is the 4 gram IV followed by 1 gram per hour till the baby is delivered. Okay, that I have, but it should not be given after 32 weeks. Very good question, Dr. Amit. Dr. Amit Basu is very intelligent. Always he listens to all the webinar, manages time. Then there is another question. That the very good question. Who has put it? I don't know. I think Dr. Uma. Role of steroid in uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. Yes, I like this. If it is indicated for the benefit of the baby, we should give the steroid for the pulmonary lung maturity, because diabetes mellitus itself enhances the respiratory distress. So we cannot omit. But obviously, we should check the blood sugar immediately after every hour to control it, if necessary, by insulin infusion. But we have to give the steroid for the benefit of the fetus. Any other question for you?
Another question come from Dr. Surekha.
Yeah.
This is if a unbooked patient with COVID positive comes to us, what to do? This is not if a patient is whether it's a book or unbooked, if the patient is COVID positive, it is better to refer the patient to the COVID designated hospital where the obstetrics facilities available, because already patient is COVID positive. But if he is an unbooked case, but you have to give the obstetric care in a COVID designated hospitals. Yes, I think there will be no problem. Patient will be admitted there and the necessary management will be given.
Another very good question by Surekha Jain. Can steroid be given in case if chorioamnionitis has set in? Yes, very intelligent question. If the chorioamnionitis has set in, the mother needs immediate termination. And the steroid to act, at least you should have by time for 24 hours. So in this case, the maternal health is very important to save the life of the mother. To avoid dissemination of infection, we should
arrange termination of pregnancy as fast as possible. Forget about steroid. In those cases, the babies will have rather surfactant, ready-made surfactant ex utero in its life.
Hello.
Yes.
The time. What about?
Yes.
Hello.
Mr. Amit Raj.
So, Amit and Amit Raj. Hello.
There are so many Amit. Amit Raj, and Dr. Amit Basu. So,
hello. We are almost the end of our session. There's so many questions also has been discussed, and our time is also is going to be end. So please, hello.
Yes. Yes, I think most of the important questions we have already discussed, and thanks to all the colleagues,
Yes.
our colleagues, senior, junior, in the state, outside the state, they are requested to stay safe in this COVID situation. As you have told about the mothers, but I tell about the doctors. I warn the doctors, and I rather send my best wishes to the doctors to be safe.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Any other message you want to give?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Any other question? Another question by Dr. Subroto Mondol. Post CS at 32 weeks with preterm pre-labor rupture of membrane. What should be done in periphery hospital?
Hello.
Yes. There is one question raised by
Yes.
Dr. Subroto Mondol.
Yes, you can answer.
Yes. Once there is rupture of membrane, we cannot expect too much delay. It is destined to deliver. But if the labor has not been initiated, in those cases, we should take the advantage of injecting steroid. At least some sort of steroid dose, at least 2 doses if you can give, and thereafter the delivery is contemplated, there is some sort of protection to the baby. Though theoretically it should act after 24 hours, but in all practical situations we have seen already the baby has received 2 injections instead of 4. They are also to some extent protective. So in those cases you do it. In the periphery, if you don't have the baby center, the NICU center, then you have to transfer the baby. So you use short-term tocolytics. And send the baby to the tertiary center by this time.
Hello.
Yes. Any other question?
Yes. No, there is lot of questions, but we have already discussed this lot of questions. This is a similar question repetition.
Yes.
So we are not going to discuss all these things. There is a more than around 30 questions, but the question is repetition. Yes, we have already given the answers.
So I think you may conclude the session then in that case.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Vishwas, for your beautiful presentation of management of preterm labor.
Same to you.
Thank you also. The Torrent Pharmaceutical, particularly the Tejaswini, Amit Raj, as well as our from Calcutta, Mr. Dibendu. They have contacted us and they have done their good effort for such a webinar in pregnancy and preterm labor. Yes.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes.
Sir Tejaswini, and on behalf of Torrent Pharma, I will like to thank you, both of you, because both of you have very experienced and expert in the gynecology field, and you have shared your experience through this webinar, which have helped lots of doctors to understand both the topics, especially what's new in prenatal care in this pandemic from Dr. Day, as well as how to take care, how to manage the preterm labor, and which came from Dr. Subhash Vishwas, who is a professor and who has a lot of experience also. So on behalf of Torrent, I really thank both of you for sharing your experience, your views, and answering all the queries which came from the participants. Yes, of course, few queries, if they are unanswered, we'll share with you, which we can, which you can answer, sir. Okay, so thanks a lot from everyone, and thanks all participants from Torrent Pharma. Thank you very much.
Nice
We
sharing
also-
the platform with all of you.
Yes, we also thanks to all the webinar viewers for this participations in this situation. Everybody is here now. Still, they have participated. Thanks a lot to all the participants, and Tejaswini, you also, and Amit Raj, and obviously the Torrent Pharmaceutical, and also our Torrent people like Dibyendu, all these things. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yes. Hello.
Yes.
So we are now to conclude. The session is ended here. Once again,
Before,
thank you all.
before we conclude, I want to convey the message to the Torrent that BOGS is our sharing platform, where from we can have all these discussions and also sharing all sort of knowledges with the help of pharmaceutical company. I was past president once upon a time, and Dr. Ramprasad is taking the charge of secretary this time.
Result is not announced. Presently, I am treasurer. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So now
Thank
the
you.
end of the session. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
end
Thanks
the
the
meeting now.
organizer. Thanks
Yes.
the meeting.
So we are leaving. Yes.
Yes, sir, you can leave.
We
Thank
can
you,
leave.
sir.
Thank you.